Remy, Remy, you scared them all away. That wasn't the plan. You scared every single one of them away. They're supposed to be in the video. All right, welcome back to the SSL Family Dad channel. Today, we're out here with the goat herd, or what's left of the nervous goat herd after our new puppy came out here and scared them all away. But I want to talk about a couple things in regards to goats today. Number one, why don't we dehorn our goats? This has been a question that has been asked many times, a question that I had when we first started raising goats. Are we going to dehorn them? Are we going to let them grow naturally? What's the benefits? Why do we do either one? So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about dehorning. Should you, shouldn't you, and what are the cons and pros of either way, all right? And the second thing I want to talk about is raising goats that have been dehorned with goats that have not been dehorned. So goats with horns playing together with goats that do not have horns. And so, can you keep the two together? Is there a problem with that? And I'll share you my experience with this particular breed of goat that we have here and what we've had. So the first thing I want to show you guys is what can happen when dehorning goes amok, when it goes wrong. And so I'm going to take you and show you our kind of dominant buck here, Adam. He's a dwarf Nigerian, or Nigerian dwarf. And he is a great goat. He's got the blue-eyed trait. We just love him. But we bought him. He was a few months old, and they had tried to dehorn him, but the process had failed, which sometimes with male goats, it's a little tricky because they come out and the horns grow real quick. You got to get them real young. So let me show you what can happen when the dehorning process goes wrong. Getting crowded in here, isn't it, guys? So we've got all the goats together in one pasture right now. We're about to separate the mothers out, but they're all hanging out together. So this is Adam, and as you can see, his horns are a complete mess. This was the result of them trying to disbud him, and they didn't burn the root of the bud of the horn off completely, and these horns grew back in what's called a scur. And this one actually broke off last year, and it's starting to regrow. This one has grown all the way around his ear, and you can see they don't grow very well. There's lots of chipping and flaking and things as well that happens. And so that's unfortunately what can happen if during that disbudding process you're basically burning the bud of that horn off when they're only a week or two old. And it's just a very dangerous process. But he's not in any discomfort or anything like that, but they unfortunately his horns do have a tendency to break because they're brittle. They're not right. They're supposed to look like that, more like this one, but bigger. She's got a good set of horns back here. This is one of our larger does. Her name is Sunday, and she's about to give birth here pretty soon. But her horns are beautiful. They look really good. You can tell they're nice and shiny. She uses them quite a bit and rubs on trees and all kinds of other stuff. So she's got nice horns. So let me just show you really quick the tool that you would use to dehorn these goats. I actually bought this when we first got goats because, like everyone told me, you've got to dehorn your goats when they're born. And so I bought the tool ahead of time expecting to do this, and as you can see, it has just gathered dust and sat in the barn. So this is the tool that you would use to dehorn the goats, and basically this is a giant soldering iron. It's a 200-watt tool. It heats up this tip to, I don't know what temperature, some ridiculous temperature. And what you do is you take your 1 or 2 week old baby goat and you burn the buds. You grab the goat's head and you hold it down, have somebody hold it down, and you stick this hot iron and you sear those buds off of the goat, the horn bud, and you do that on each side. And it's honestly a pretty brutal process. You are burning for between 10 and 20 seconds a red hot piece of metal on their head right next to their brain. And you can, I've heard some pretty bad stories of people who've killed goats doing this wrong. You can hurt the goat, like I said, you can do it wrong and end up having horns grow back anyway. And so, you know, honestly, although I considered doing this because I thought it was necessary, I now will probably never use this tool. So maybe I'll sell it on Craigslist. So there's a whole mixture in here. These, as I said, are all dwarf Nigerian goats. Except for him, I'm not sure what he is. He was given to us. This is a wether, so he's been fixed or neutered, and he has also been disbudded or dehorned, so he does not have horns. He lives in here with all these guys, even the buck that has horns. We've got a doe back here that has horns. We've got a wether back there that has horns. Like I said, that doe, this is a wether. This is a doe without horns. This is another doe with horns. So a whole mixture of goats in here. So to answer the question, can these guys live together? Absolutely. There's no problem with them. They will headbutt each other. We definitely see some of that. I don't know if I have any video of them actually headbutting, but especially when we first put them together, they will headbutt. You know, new goats, especially the bucks. They'll kind of figure out who's dominant and all that good stuff, and they'll work it out. And when a goat with horns headbutts a goat without horns, they still have this very hard plate on their head that takes that force. And it doesn't, I don't want to say it doesn't hurt them, but they know when to let up. You know, they know when to you know, let up from that headbutt so that they don't get hurt. We have had, sometimes the two bucks will get together and they'll headbutt each other and they'll get some blood on the tops of their head. You know, I've seen him with a little bit right here, but that's just for the first day that they're together. And then after that, they figure it out, and they know who's boss, and they know to let up. They know it's going to hurt when they headbutt, and so that's that. The females, the does, they don't seem to really headbutt too much each other. You know, there's some pushing and some shoving and stuff like that goes on, especially with this mama back here. She's kind of a rude one, but some of them are more dominant than others, and they'll or attention hogs like this one. So to answer that question, it's totally fine to get a buck or a doe or a wether with horns or without horns if you already have a herd, you know, of the opposite. So it's not going to be a big deal. Yes, there's going to be some headbutting going on. That is a social behavior of goats. That is what they do. It is not necessarily aggressive. They're not being mean to each other. They're not, you know, picking on each other or anything like that. It's just that is a social behavior of the goat. Those horns are designed to hit. They're designed to hit each other, and their heads are designed. You know, the front of their heads are designed that way. So you know, if you put a goat with horns and a goat without horns together, you know, they're going to headbutt each other maybe a little bit, and they're going to work it out, and they're going to be best friends afterwards, and they're going to be just fine. They're not going to, you know, now if you got you know, other breeds, it could be different, bigger goats, different things. I'm not saying this is like the 100% rule, but from my experience, we've never had an issue having a mixed breed or a mixed herd of goats with horns and without. So the next question that I'd like to answer, I guess I'm doing these in the opposite order that I introduced them in, but the next question, and the real question, is should you dehorn your goats? Is it necessary? Is it something that you need to do? And it really depends on your situation, but I'm going to tell you what we think about it, what I think about it, and what we the rules that we kind of follow here. First of all, the horns on a goat are useful for the goat, okay? The only reason that I can see that we ever disbud or dehorn goats is for humans' purposes. So we don't want to deal with fencing. We don't want to deal with them getting stuck in certain kinds of fencing. We don't want to deal with you know, if we have little kids around the goat that, you know, maybe they bring their head up quickly or something, and then they, you know, hit somebody in the face or something like that. So we're worried about our safety, or kids, or whatever. And so we disbud and we dehorn the goats. There's also this huge culture that unfortunately has been created, I don't know why, of the show goats. And you know, even the FFAs and the 4-H clubs and all this stuff, you can't have these goats at the fair and can't do any of those things with horns. You know, they've completely removed the whole option to keep a goat in its natural state, and of course they require you to dehorn them or disbud them. So let's address some of the issues that people have with horns. The safety issue, number one. Goats are not dangerous with the horns. Goats do not headbutt people that I've ever seen. If they do, you know, bucks, or if you have an aggressive buck or something like that, or even a pregnant doe, which we've never had with this breed, you know, then fine. You just have to be careful on the animal, just like any farm animal. You know, these are pets, but they're also farm animals, and so we have to just take some basic precautions. Don't throw your 2-year-old in with, you know, a goat that has horns, or without horns for that matter, because they could get hurt, and you just have to be careful. And take precautions with that stuff. So that's not really an issue for us. The other one is fencing. That's the biggest thing. You know, goats are going to get their head stuck in fence. They have the horns. They can't get them out. I have found that even with the wrong type of fencing that was here when we moved in, the goats figure out how to get their heads out of the fence. You know, they get their head stuck, and they get stuck in there for a few hours before I find them usually, and that is very uncomfortable for them, and they don't like that. And so they figure it out, and they stick their heads through the fence less and less and less. Also, you can use the correct kind of fencing for goats, which is goat and sheep fencing, or welded wire with the smaller squares, or electric fencing, and then you won't have that issue anyway. So that's part of something we can do to keep a goat with horns in its natural state in a safe place, in a pen that's designed for a goat. Same thing with milking stanchions, same thing with all that other stuff. You design hay feeders, you design all those things for goats with horns, because goats have horns, and that's what we should be doing. Goats have horns for lots of reasons. Number one, they are defensive. They are social for each other. They establish a dominance and a pecking order in the herds that way. They use those horns for that, and the horns absorb all of that shock when they hit each other. The horns absorb that shock, and there's a bone in there that's like fused right to their skull, and they're super tough, those horns are. But they are also defensive, so you know, they can take those horns and they can scare off a lot of small predators. No, they're not, you know, a bear or a wolf or a pack of coyotes, or you know, something like that. They're probably not going to be able to defend that, but you know, these horns do give these guys quite an advantage defensively when it comes to, you know, making sure that they don't get hurt by other animals. So that's one reason, especially when we're keeping goats out in larger pastures like this. You know, they're out and about quite a distance from the house very often, and we want to make sure that they're protected. So why not let them keep their own natural defensive mechanisms in place? They also are useful for moving the goats around and handling them. They're much better than collars, and when you don't have horns on a goat, you generally have to grab them by their hair, their ears, or something like that. But these horns can help us to hold the goats still when we're trying to clip their nails and things like that. So they can be advantageous to humans, but they're mostly advantageous for our little goats here. The other big thing with horns is that they are a heat dissipating mechanism for the brain and the blood flow throughout the head. So if you live in hotter environments, goats, they actually radiate a lot of their heat. There is blood flow through the core of those horns, and they are purposefully designed to radiate heat from the goat's brain. And so obviously that could be important if you live in a hot environment, or just hot summers here in Michigan. You know, it's important for us. And the last, I guess, major thing that the horns are good for is they're useful. It's a tool of the goat. The goats eat a lot of twigs and barks and other things like that. They will root things up sometimes with their horns, and they can, unfortunately, it does help them open gates and fencing and other things like that sometimes as well. But they use those horns as a tool to move things around, to rub sticks and things like that, and get the bark peeled off, and then they nibble away at it. Well, I just broke my microphone because the goats used their horns to knock over my tripod. This one hates my tripod. But we have had very good luck with our mixed herd of boys and girls and bucks and wethers and all that good stuff, with horns and without horns. And we just prefer that all the goats that are born here on our farm will keep their horns. We just have not run across a single good enough reason to dehorn or disbud these goats when they're born here. So we're about to have a lot of goat kids, and all of them will be natural births, and as natural as possible. It's, you know, I think disbudding has become this thing that just everyone, oh, you have to do that, but you really don't. But hopefully that helped answer some questions that maybe you had about these things. I know some people have asked before about, you know, having mixed herds with horns and without, and some people have asked, you know, why we don't disbud or what we feel about it and all that good stuff. So hopefully that helped to answer those questions. But if I left something out, if there's a reason that goats should keep their horns that I forgot to mention, throw that in the comments. If you find that there's a reason that goats shouldn't have their horns, throw that in the comments too. I'd love to hear from you guys. There's lots of different opinions on this, and I don't think anybody's wrong necessarily. I just think there's different reasons for things, and hopefully I gave you mine. So don't forget to hit thumbs up on the video as always, guys, and subscribe to the SSL Family Dad channel if you'd like to follow along. Lots of farming and animal things and DIY projects and gardening and living as sustainably as we possibly can over here. We'll share that whole journey with you guys. So as always, guys, thanks for watching. Have a good one.